Hey guys, it's Alex. Happy Friday. Today I wanted to put together a video of the 6 classic novels that I'm going to be reading throughout 2018. In my 2018 goals video, I had said that my plan for the year was to read 6 classics. There's actually going to be 7 of them, but 2 of them are novellas, so I'm kind of counting those as one. I actually had a lot of fun picking out the books that I want to read for the year, so I'm pretty excited about them. Some of them have been on my shelf for quite a while. I have a lot of the Barnes & Noble classic editions, and I figured what better time than now to start reading them. I really like the way that they look, and they've just been sitting on my shelf staring at me. Some of them I purchased myself. I think most of them have been given to me as gifts, and there's no sense in letting a pretty book just sit on my shelf forever. So it's time I bust some of those out, so I'm pretty excited to share with you what I'm going to be reading this year. These are in no particular order. However, the first book I am going to show you just happens to be on my January TBR. I'll be doing a separate video with the rest of the books that are on my TBR for the month. But the first one is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I have not read this before. It is one of the Barnes & Noble classic editions that I've had sitting on my shelf for quite some time now, so I'm really excited to read it. It is the story of Dorian Gray, and from what I know about the novel, he essentially sells his soul for eternal youth, and while his body no longer ages, a photograph of him continues to age. I think it's probably going to be the next book I read for the month, which means I'll be starting it either tonight or tomorrow. If all goes as planned, I will have more about this book on my January wrap-up, so you'll be able to get a more in-depth review and see what I thought about it there. The next 2 books that I'm going to talk about are the 2 novellas that I picked out for the year. The first one being Notes from the Underground by Dostoevsky. This is an existentialist novel that basically deals with the self. The narrator is an unnamed narrator, and he's considered the underground man, and it's basically just his ramblings. I have read this before. I did have to read it for one of my college classes, and when I was picking it out, I kind of flipped through and read the first few pages, and I do vaguely remember it. I think as I actually start reading it, I'll probably remember more about when I was reading it in college. So we'll see. It'll be a good comparison. The next novella that I'm going to read is The Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. I also read this in college. I'd say I remember more about this than I do Notes from the Underground. This is extremely short. It's only 72 pages. I say this now, but sometimes these really short novellas are extremely dense and take forever to get through. In this story, the main character, Marlowe, is sitting on a boat on the River Thames, and he's telling the story of his voyage up the Congo River in Africa. And on that voyage, he meets Kurz, who is an ivory trader, and tells of his relationship with the inhabitants there. The story tells the parallels between London and Africa and how they're both places of darkness. And I know there's definitely some issues with this book, and it's supposed to make you feel a certain way. I think I'm more excited about having a discussion about this book afterwards more than I am about reading it. So we'll see. The next book on my list for classics to read in 2018 is Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. This is a French novel that follows the story of a woman named Emma. She is married to a doctor, and eventually she becomes extremely bored with her life. So it's about her trying to live outside of her means, basically, and spice up her life. I know there's some affairs and different things that happen in here, and it tells of the difference between these romantic ideals versus reality. So I've heard good things about this one. It got decent reviews from what I just glanced at on Goodreads, and I'm excited to check it out. A little bit of a segue. I'm just going to show you my favorite mug. It just says, "I'm only talking to my dog today." I got this at Bed Bath & Beyond like 2 years ago, and I mean, I love it because it says I'm only talking to my dog today, but I also love how ginormous it is, so I can fit a lot of coffee in here. And actually, I have only talked to my dog today, and he's laying right here, passed out right now. Yeah. Anyways, the next two books I'm going to mention, I'm a little ashamed to say that I have not read these yet, but that's why I'm doing this challenge to myself to read more classics this year. Because now, after 2018, I'll be able to say that I have read these books. So, one of the books that I'm ashamed to say I have not read is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I haven't read this. I know it's a romance. I know it's about Jane and Mr. Rochester, I believe. Yeah. And it's about their love story. I believe Jane is a governess for Mr. Rochester, and then they fall in love, even though I think he's like mean to her at first. I don't know. I don't know too much about this book. I know it's a love story. It is also one of the Barnes & Noble classic editions, and it's just extremely nice to look at. So I'm going to cross this off my list this year. I actually did try to read this a long time ago. I think I was like 10 or 11, and my mom had a copy of this on her shelf. So me being 10 years old was like, I know this is a big book, and I'm gonna read it. And yeah, I read I don't even know, maybe 50 pages? I don't remember, I was 10. But I didn't read very much of it. I was a kid. I didn't understand what the heck was going on. So yeah, I haven't ever picked this up as an adult. The second book that I am going to read this year that I'm ashamed to say that I have not read is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And I'll admit something even further, that I have never read a Jane Austen novel. That's so bad. I can't believe I have not read any Jane Austen. I have on my bookshelf, up there somewhere, I actually have an entire box set of all Jane Austen novels, and I think I have the Barnes & Noble Classic Edition that's humongous, and it's a bunch of Jane Austen novels as well, and I haven't read any of them. I don't know why, but that's about to change. So I'm going to read Pride and Prejudice first. I think this is a good one to start with. I have seen the movie, so I do know what this is about, although it's been a long time, so yeah, I'll probably be surprised because I don't really remember. I know it's a Victorian romance novel, and it's a love story between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet. I will say I'm a little nervous to read this one because I have heard mixed reviews. Some people absolutely love this book, and it's one of their all-time favorites, and other people aren't that crazy about it, but I guess any novel is that way, so I'm excited to read it. The last book on my list to read for my 2018 classics, I have read before. I read this in college. I vaguely remember what it was about, and I do remember enjoying it in college. I'm going to read it again because one of my goals for 2018 was to also do some rereads, so this kind of fits into both categories, which is nice. But the last book is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It is the story of the Bonita family, follows their family tree throughout 100 years, and it can get a little confusing because there's definitely some incest and some crazy stuff that goes on in this book, and a lot of the characters from younger generations have the same name as characters from the older generation. From what I can remember, I really enjoyed reading this in college, so I'm going to give it another shot in 2018 and see how it goes. So that is all of the classic novels that I want to read in 2018. Let me know down below if there's any of these that you've read and what you think of them, or if there's any classics that you think really should have made my list this year and that I just have to read. Let me know. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great weekend.